Greetings, I am Duncan Idaho, Foundry author and creature from the Black Lagoon. Today I've emerged to show you a little bit into a Foundry build in progress. So for Foundry authors, you'll be able to see something I'm making right now, not in real time, but just to see something that's halfway completed. And for people new to the Foundry, you'll be able to see what it looks like when someone's in the middle of building one of these things. So we'll take a look at some characters, take a look at a map, and call it a day right there. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. There we have the Foundry editor. It's a lot of gray, but it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful place. This project I've got going on here, I'm titling right now Star Trek Sierra. It's a Foundry episode, very much built in the style of a Star Trek TV show. So AEI is basically in the style of something completely different. Star Trek Starfleet Security is in the style of basically Terry Pratchett's Night Watch series for a little bit of an inside thing of how I'm running that story. But Star Trek Sierra is based on one ship. It has a plot, a main plot based around something to do on that ship, which relates to a lot of different characters on that vessel as well. So as you might guess, the name of the ship is the USS Sierra. So let's take a look at some of the characters. Here we have the main villain, a space pirate. Here, we have the main villain again, with the eye patch on the other side. Watch for that. I'm not going to refer to it in the mission, but I'm referring to it right now. I might be doing that the whole time. Fun, fun. But as you can see, we've got the main list of characters. It's not particularly large right now for what I end up doing for a mission. Again, this is basically not even, I'd say, 20% done at best. Maybe even 15. So, main character is what I basically started building. So I had this idea that, hey, I want to build a ship, probably call it the USS Sierra. So who's on that? So here we have Frank, our chief of security. He is an Laurentian android. So, kind of the justification here is that, well, androids in Star Trek are generally very, very complicated to make because they have positronic brains. On the other hand, we have holograms, which have computer-based code. But at the same time, they have problems when it comes to a mobile emitter. Those are really advanced technology. There's not a whole lot of them, even by 2410. So here's the compromise. A physical, cheap body with a computer algorithm-based processing unit. So that's Frank, and he started out life as a shipbreaker. And what he's become is Chief of Security in Starfleet. So that's his background. We're not going to go through that through the mission, but that's his overall arc. I want to show you the next character because I just realized that the plot of the mission is in, well, the big reveal is in the description, so let's not go put that on camera. So here we have the ship. It's the USS Sierra. We won't be able to use this in any of the ground builds, but this is what you're going to be seeing in the space builds. So in the Foundry, you can make ships, you can make characters. Here, we've made a ship very similar to how you make it in the main game. We've got our bits, we've got our hull options. We can't name it, so if you zoom in close, you have lots of miscellaneous numbers, but that's not going to be a big detail. So here's the Sierra. It's a modified Sovereign class. If we get a revamped Tier 6 Sovereign class in the near future, I'll be using that instead. But here is the ship as we have it now. Well, I might use it. We'll see. Here we have the captain, Captain Leo. He is an alien captain person. So we'll see what's up with him. We have our Chief Science Officer, Professor Davis. And I made him a professor just to give that a little bit more of an additional feel for the science officer to actually have him involved in academia. We have our chief of engineering, Bezada. We have Haddon, who is a Bajoran security officer who works under Frank. People who've played SSF Entanglement will notice that he actually shows up in that mission as a background character. We have our doctor, Dr. Sobag, who is I've labeled as a Cybok type Vulcan. So very loud, very boisterous, not afraid of showing emotion. So he should be fun to write for. And then we have one of the pirates, which is a modification of the main pirate captain, the Skomians. So we'll be seeing more of them through the mission. So as far as space pirates go in Star Trek, we've generally had more pirate raiders. So we've had the Noskins, we've had Orions. These guys are pirates in the sense of yo-ho-ho. So that should be fun. And then a miscellaneous alien character who pops up at one point in the mission to offer a little bit of dialogue. I think right now, we'll see. tactical hologram, miscellaneous officer, and then the many faces of Frank. So we've got Frank when he's angry, Frank when he's sad, Frank when he's bemused, and Frank when he's feeling pretty intense. So this is basically loud, shouty Frank before he gets into full angry. And here we've got one of the pirate ships, which is a modified Kelvin D4X Bird of Prey, but with a new paint job. So hopefully that won't look too much. Hopefully that'll look pretty original when you actually play it in the mission. But for now, there we go. It looks pretty good, but we'll see how the wings articulate and all that. I wish I could just keep it in this configuration, but we'll see. And we've got Sonoya, who is the partner of Haddon in SF-T3. So that's the character lineup, -1, and we'll see what they get up to in the mission. So now, let's go to the map. So here's the map I want to show off today, the interior of the USS Sierra. So let's go ahead and play the map. Just as a general point, this is very much not completed. So there's a lot of details that need to be tweaked, a lot of coordinates that need to be moved around. So it's really rough, but we'll see what basically what something like this looks like as we, as it's sort of frozen in this state of half completion, or barely 1/3 completion. This is not a sort of bridge area or an engineering area, but more or less a living space with a few other facilities mixed around to it. So we're going to be spawning in here, not where the player's going to be spawning in, but just as a convenient point. So we've got my TOS bridge crew for my Foundry character, and we're going to have them sit over here. Where, yeah, guarding that miscellaneous object, which will finish the mission on a test run, but just on the other side of this curving hallway. So you notice, textures are flickering right there. That's what happens when you have two texture planes fighting for supremacy in the very, very same location. Something like that gets fixed by adjusting the coordinate system a little bit. So again, this is something that I still got to do a lot of cleaning and polishing, and also putting a ceiling on, because you noticed this is now a convertible sovereign class. It will not be a convertible sovereign class, but how I generally approach a ground build like this is to build the entire map and then put a ceiling on it, because that way you can actually see what you're doing. Because once you put the ceiling on in the editor, it's going to cover everything up. So it's basically my last step. So we've got a lot of other detail here. We've got Frank sitting here with a little bit of mission dialogue, which we won't go through because that's for actually playing the mission. And I also might change that radically. We'll see. Probably not for that one because it's a pretty good intro to the character of Frank, but I don't want to put it on the stream right now. So here we go. We've got our mess hall. Chairs, replicator. I'm not too happy with that right now at the replicator setup. So we'll see how that goes. I like this bit. It's just this console bit. I'm not sure. So we'll see how that goes. So we've got a few displays. That display's still penetrating the wall. And that's something that I got to tweak a little bit. But we've got tables. We've got a character. We've got another character. We've got a kind of a more group table focused right by this window out into space. And there should hopefully be a little bit more detail there in the final build, such as a nacelle coming up right in the background. So we'll see. And here is a bar area which will be populated and given a little bit more light. So, and again, the just with the convertible starship thing, I don't need to worry about lighting too much right now. It's kind of shows up a little bit later in the build, once I know exactly sort of how I'm going to be lighting the space up. So that's all two entrances. This one's a little bit inspired by 10 Forward, and the other one is an auxiliary entrance. It's basically there because it made sense. So when I'm building this thing, I sort of think a little bit about what we've seen in the various TV shows. I'd say most of all, this build so far has been inspired by Next Generation, which does make a little bit of sense since this is a sovereign class. But the overall feel I'll be going for the mission, in terms of writing and characters, is probably going to be a little closer to Enterprise. So we'll see how everything turns out with that. So here we have a hydroponics bay. We have Klingon giant wall lights. Hiding the lights, but just getting what might be some sort of functional wall item just all around to just sort of break up the usual monotony of that Federation wall piece. And we've got our various containers with plants in them. So no real particular reason for this to be in the story right now, but it felt like, a space I could build out, have a little bit of fun with, and just sort of give a little bit more sense of feeling to this interior, since Hopefully the player is going to be spending a little bit more time in this area, because again, it's a Foundry episode based more around one ship than they might have done in previous interior starship builds I've done. So here we have the sick bay. So we have drape items. That just adds a little bit more feel to it. We've got our various, minor patient biobeds, so people in recovery, people who are only having minor operations. And we've got our sort of main office desk, not office desk, but main sort of personnel desks set up here. And we've got a couple of different rooms. So these right now don't necessarily have a lot of connection to the story. But again, nice little spaces that I was able to build out pretty cheaply. And probably adding more detail later. That just kind of adds more of a functional feel to this map. So in addition to having just the pure story elements, you will also be able to sort of go through and experience what you would expect to see in a Federation starship build. Here we have a room I haven't populated yet. I was thinking about making it a theater, but we'll see. Could also just be miscellaneous storage base, but that one I'm sort of reserving for main plot stuff. So, lastly, let's go ahead and take a look at the crew quarters. The last area I've got currently built at this ship. So there's two. A lot of these doors don't open. That's perfectly fine because that way I don't have to build out this entire space and eat up my asset count. So here we have the first room. It's for one of the characters, and that character is got a little something going on, and a little bit of that is actually hinted by the layout of this room. So you notice there's not a whole lot. It's not really personal, and we just have the basics. We have a wall console, we have a work desk, and we just have a few boxes laying around. So this person isn't necessarily into art, or at least doesn't have that set up yet. But the one little detail I did put into this map, not for any particular reason that this is emblematic of the character, but because I figured, you know what, I'm going to show one of these off. This is a bathroom. It is a bathroom in Star Trek. And more importantly, there is a, well, what you can imagine might be a toilet. Or else it could just be a shower seat. But basically, I want to show the fact that people do live here. That there are bathrooms in Star Trek. They don't just use the transporters. So, a little bit of a joke there. But as far as the mission goes, it doesn't have a whole lot of significance, just a little area that you can build out, add a little bit more texture to the overall feel of the map, and just get it feeling a little bit more, not necessarily authentic, because I don't think you'll really be able to do that completely with a Foundry mission, because again, we're just repurposing assets, but something that just feels right. Something that feels like, you know, for the format, this is a great representation of a Federation starship. So, there we go. Here's another crew quarters, and this person doesn't have a bed. They just have a work desk. Little bit of an art thing going on here. Might add a few little details onto here, but yeah, that's what this character has going on. So, quarters, you can actually get a little bit of personality, a little bit of detail in just how you build these out. You don't necessarily need to just do a bed, a desk. You can approach it in different ways. I'll come to this plan in just a second. You can approach it in different ways that supplements what you're going to be showing through dialogue and mission elements. I'm showing this plant right now just because it is interpenetrating the wall. Again, another example of the fact that those tiny details is something that you do spend a lot of time working on. A lot of things you put it down once, and it's like, well, that should work out just fine, but the 2D and the 3D don't necessarily match up, so you end up having to tweak a lot of small details. Like, let's go back into this character's quarters. There is this console, which is interpenetrating the wall. So I'll have to make a special edit for that, test it, come back, test it again, just make sure everything's right. And for all these small details, that's generally what you end up having to do. So for a completed map, such as you may have seen in Entanglement or any of my other missions, I've finished that process, come out of it, and ended up with something that looks a lot more polished. So this is something that's totally a work in progress, and I'll finish off by falling outside of the map in that giant hole where I put my bridge officers. But yeah, this is something that's going to be a work in progress. I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to get to it, because I do have 2 other Foundry missions that I need to build to finish off my current series, Epic Part 2, and the last mission of the Starfleet Security Files. I'm just saying it's the last mission. It might not be the last mission, but it's the last mission I've got planned right now. There might be something coming after that, but I have no idea what it could be. That'd be Season 3, but we'll see. So anyway, this is the underside of the map. Players will never see this, but it's again just another little illustration of when you're playing a Foundry mission, this is a lot of what you guys are actually going through. A lot of just it's as complete as you need to see it as. I think generally gaming, operates by this method. So you have limited resources, limited time, so you just build out just enough for the player to see. And even when you're, thinking about how they put on the Star Trek TV series, this is again what they've got going on. So you just have a hallway. It's going to be reused a lot. And for the Foundry mission here, it's going to be duplicated out, expanded, that sort of thing. So, with that, I will call it a stream. So, hopefully we'll be continuing on with the full Foundry playthroughs. I've got a couple couple missions that were not produced by me lined up to play through. And I'm going to at least do Epoch Part 1 for my commentary streams. So, we'll be getting to those in the near future. Hopefully, we'll get out one or two before downtime. And thanks for watching. Hope you got a little something out of it. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll be continuing this in the near future.